子张 Chapter 19 1. 子张曰：是见微致命，见得思义，既思敬，丧思哀，其可已矣。A disciple of Confucius remarked, A gentleman in presence of danger should be ready to give up his life. In view of personal advantage, he should think of what is right. In worship, he should be devout and serious. In mourning, he should show heartfelt grief. The above is about the sum of the duties of a gentleman. 2. 子张曰：直德不弘，信道不笃，焉能为有？焉能为王？ The same disciple remarked, If a man holds fast to godliness without enlarging his mind, if a man believes in truth, but is not steadfast in holding to his principles, such a man may as well leave such things alone. 3. 子夏之门人问交于子张。子张曰：子夏云何？对曰：子夏曰：可者与之，其不可者拒之。子张曰：以乎无所闻，君子尊贤而容众，嘉善而今不能。我之大贤语，于人何所不容？我之不贤语，人将惧我，如之何其惧人也？ The same disciple was on one occasion asked about friendship by the pupils of one of his fellow disciples. He answered by asking the pupils, What did your teacher say on the subject? Our teacher, replied the pupils, said, Those whom you find good, make friends with. Those whom you find not good, turn your back upon. That, replied Confucius' disciple who was asked, is different from what I have been taught. A wise and good man honors worthy men and is tolerant to all men. He knows how to commend those who excel in anything and make allowance for those who are ignorant. Now, if we ourselves are really worthy, we should be tolerant to all men. But if we ourselves are not worthy, men will turn their backs upon us. How can we turn our backs upon them? 4. 子夏曰：虽小道，必有可观者焉。至远恐疑，是以君子不为也。A disciple of Confucius remarked, Even in any small and unimportant branch of an art or accomplishment, there is always something worthy of consideration. But if the attention to it is pushed too far, it is liable to degenerate into a hobby. For that reason a wise man never occupies himself with it. 5. 子夏曰：日知其所亡，月无忘其所能，可谓好学也已矣。 The same disciple of Confucius remarked, A man who from day to day knows exactly what he has yet to learn and from month to month does not forget what he has learned, will surely become a man of culture. 6. 子夏曰：博学而笃志，切问而尽思，人在其中矣。 The same disciple remarked, If you study extensively and are steadfast in your aim, investigate carefully what you learn and apply it to your own personal conduct. In that way, you cannot fail in attaining a moral life. 7. 子夏曰：百工居肆以成其事，君子学以知其道。 The same disciple remarked, As workmen work in their workshops to learn their trade, so a scholar gives himself to study in order to get wisdom. 8. 子夏曰：小人之过也必闻。 The same disciple remarked, A fool always has an excuse ready when he does wrong. 9. 子夏曰：君子有三变，望之俨然，及之也温，听其言也利。 The same disciple remarked, A good and wise man appears different from 3 points of view. When you look at him from a distance, he appears severe. When you approach him, he is gracious. When you hear him speak, he is serious. 10. 子夏曰：君子信而后劳其民，未信则以为利己也；信而后见，未信则以为谤己也。 The same disciple remarked, A wise man, as a ruler, first obtains the confidence of the people before he puts them to hard work which otherwise would be regarded by the people as oppression. A wise man, as a public servant, first obtains the confidence of those whom he serves before he ventures to point out their errors. Otherwise, his superiors will only regard what he says as prompted by a desire to find faults. 11. 子夏曰：大德不逾贤，小德出入可也。The same disciple remarked, when a man can keep himself strictly within bounds where the major points of the principles of morality are concerned, he may be allowed to use his discretion in the minor points. 12. 子游曰：子夏之门人小子，当洒扫，应对，进退，则可以。亦莫也，本之则无。如之何？子夏闻之曰：一，言犹过矣。君子之道，孰先传焉？孰后倦焉？辟诸草木，趋以别矣。君子之道，焉可污也？有始有足者，其为圣人乎？ A disciple of Confucius, speaking of the pupils of another disciple, remarked, Those young gentlemen are well enough in matters of manners and deportment, which are mere minor matters, but as regards the foundation of a true education, they are as yet nowhere. When the disciple whose pupils were thus animadverted upon heard the remark, he said to the other disciple, There you are wrong. In teaching men, what are the things which a good and wise man should consider it of first importance that he should teach, and what are the things which he should consider of secondary importance, and which he may allow himself to neglect? As in dealing with plants, so one must deal with pupils and class them according to their capabilities. A good and wise man in teaching should not befall his students, for it is only the most holy men who can at once grasp the beginning and end of principles. 13. 子夏曰：士而优则学，学而优则仕。A disciple of Confucius remarked, An officer who has exceptional abilities, more than sufficient to carry out his duties, should devote himself to study. A student who has exceptional abilities, more than sufficient to carry on his studies, should enter the public service. 14. 子游曰：丧至乎哀而止。A disciple of Confucius remarked, In mourning, the only thing indispensable is heartfelt grief. 15. 子游曰：吾有章也，为难能也。然而为人。The same disciple, speaking of another disciple, remarked, My friend can do things which nobody else can do, but he is not quite perfect in his moral character. 16. 曾子曰：堂堂乎章也，难于并为人矣。Another disciple of Confucius, speaking of the same disciple alluded to above, remarked, What a style that moral carries about with him. It is really difficult to live out a moral life along with such a man. 17. 曾子曰：吾闻诸夫子，人未有自治者也，必也亲丧乎？ The same disciple remarked, I have heard the master say, Men often do not themselves know what is really in them until they have to mourn the death of their parents. 18. 曾子曰：吾闻诸夫子，孟庄子之孝也，其他可能也，其不改父之臣，与父之政，是难能也。The same disciple remarked, I have heard the master, speaking of the filial piety of a noble man, say, What other things he did on the occasion of the death of his father, other men can do. But what he did in keeping the old servants of his father, and in following out the policy of his father, men will find it difficult to do. 19. 孟氏使杨夫为士师，问于曾子。曾子曰：上失其道，民散久矣。如得其情，则哀今而勿喜。The prime minister in Confucius' native state having, on one occasion, appointed an officer to be chief criminal judge, the officer came to a disciple of Confucius for advice. The disciple then said to the officer, Rulers have long failed in their duties, and the people have long lived in a state of disorganization. If you should discover enough evidence to convict a man, feel pity and be merciful to him. Do not feel glad at your discovery. Footnote 86. Welchen Wei must niet die Menschheit maken bis es ie dahin gelangt, auch gegen schuldig gelangt, gegen verbreches konend, gegen auch unmenschlich zu sein. Gewiss wären ie als Männer göttlicher Natur, die es Surs lerten, sie Leben damit zu brachten, die Ausbildung möglich zu machen, und die zu beschleunigen. What a long way mankind must travel before they arrive at the stage when they know how to be tender to evildoers, considerate to lawbreakers, and human even to the inhuman. Truly they were men of divine nature who first taught this and who gave up their lives in order to make the realization of this possible and to hasten the practice of it. Goethe, Wilhelm Meister. 20. 子贡曰：纣之不善，不如是之甚也。是以君子务居下流，天下之恶皆归焉。A disciple of Confucius, speaking of an infamous emperor and tyrant of ancient times, remarked, his wickedness was, after all, not so bad as tradition reports. Therefore wise men will not persist in a low, disreputable life in defiance of what men may say. For otherwise, people will give him credit for all the wickednesses that are in the world. 21. 子贡曰：君子之过也，如日月之食焉。过也，人皆见之；更也，人皆仰之。The same disciple remarked, the failings of a great man are eclipses of the sun and moon. When he fails, all men see it. But when he recovers from his failing, all men look up to him as before. 22. 魏公孙朝问于子贡曰：仲尼焉学？子贡曰：文武之道，未坠于地，在人。贤者识其大者，不贤者识其小者，莫不有文武之道焉。夫子焉不学，而亦何常师之有？An officer of the court in a certain state asked the disciple of Confucius, from whom did Confucius learn the principles he taught? The disciple answered, the principles of religion and morality held by the ancients have not all disappeared. Even now among men, those who are wise and worthy understand the great principles of the system, and those who are not wise, and even unworthy men, understand the lesser principles. As to our teacher, he had no need to learn, and even if he had to learn, why should he necessarily have had one special teacher? 23. 叔孙武叔与大夫于朝，曰：子贡贤于仲尼。子服景伯以告子贡。子贡曰：辟之攻强，次之强也极坚，窥见世家之好。夫子之强数任，不得其门而入，不见宗庙之美，百官之富，得其门者或寡矣。夫子之云，不亦宜乎？An officer of the court in Confucius' native state, expressing admiration for a disciple of Confucius, remarked in presence of the other court officers, in my opinion, this disciple of Confucius is superior to Confucius himself. Afterwards, when somebody reported what the officer had said to the disciple above referred to, the latter said, let me use the comparison of two buildings. The wall of a building only reaches to the shoulders. One has only to look over and he can see all that is valuable in the apartments. But the wall of the master's building is hundreds of feet high. If one does not find the door to enter by, he can never see the treasures of art and the glory of the men that are in the holy temple. Perhaps, however, there are few men who have found the door. I do not therefore wonder that the officer spoke as he did. 24. 叔孙武叔毁仲尼。子贡曰：吾以为也，仲尼不可毁也。他人之贤者，丘陵也，犹可逾也。仲尼，日月也，无德而逾焉。人虽欲自绝，其何伤于日月乎？多见其不知良也。The same court officer was once heard to abuse the character of Confucius. The same disciple, on hearing of it, said, "It is no use for him to do that." Confucius can never be abused. The moral and intellectual endowments of other men, as compared with those of Confucius, are as hillocks and mounds which you may climb over. But Confucius is like the sun and moon. You can never jump over them. You may break your neck in trying to do it, but the sun and moon will remain as they are. In trying to do that, you only show your want of sense in not knowing what you can do. 25. 臣子秦谓子贡曰：“子为公也，仲尼其贤于子乎？”子贡曰：“君子一言以为之，一言以为不知，言不可不慎也。夫子之不可及也，由天之不可接而生也。夫子之得邦家者，所谓利之思利，道之思行，随之思来，动之思和。其生也荣，其死也哀。如之何其可及也？” Another mouth on another occasion said to the same disciple, "But you are too earnest and conscientious. How can Confucius be superior to you?" "For one word," replied the disciple, "an educated man is held to be a man of understanding, and for one word he is held to be foolish. You should therefore be careful indeed in what you say." Now Confucius not be equaled, just as no man can climb up to the sky. If Confucius, our master, had been born an emperor or a prince, he would then have done those things told of the holy kings of old. What he lays down becomes law. What he orders is carried out. Whither he beckons, the people follow. Wherever his influence is felt, there is peace. While he lives honored by the whole world. When he dies, he is mourned for by the whole world. How is it possible for a man to equal Confucius, our master?